There's been one sentence that has cropped up in conversation time and time again, and it always stuns people when I say it. I haven't actually played Metroid. This confession seems insane to any American gamer I speak to, however you have to remember that I don't live in the USA. I didn't grow up with a Nintendo Entertainment System. I started off with a Master System before moving on to a Mega Drive, as did almost everyone I went to school with. Sega outsold Nintendo 3-1 in the UK. The only person I knew with a Super Nintendo was my cousin John, and when I first saw it, I distinctly remember asking him, "Why does your Mega Drive look weird?" I didn't get introduced to Samus until Christmas 1999, and even then I only knew her as a badass pick in Super Smash Bros. She didn't get her own game on the Nintendo 64, I skipped the GameCube in favour of a PlayStation 2, and the Wii didn't get a look in next to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. All of her games simply passed me by. That said, I do have an awareness and distant appreciation of the Metroid series. It feels like every YouTuber under the sun has praised the franchise at length, while I've become a fan of series like Shantae, which owe a lot to Samus's adventures. With Dread out and FOMO being all too real, I figured it was finally time to play these games for myself. We're starting with Zero Mission, the Game Boy Advance remake of the first game. Yes, I know that means I'm not seeing the series' mechanical evolution, and that might be unfair to Super Metroid in particular when we get to it, but I can't return to these graphics, and when Zero Mission's quality of life improvements include staples as basic as the goddamn map, I see absolutely no reason to subject myself to the NES original. I'll admit, I was a bit intimidated going in. Based on Metroid's reputation, I was expecting a challenging game. I wasn't even sure that I'd be able to beat it. I was completely surprised at how relatively short, relaxing, and rewarding my playthrough turned out to be. Granted, I played on normal, not hard, and I got the worst ending due to being 2 minutes too slow, however the majority of the game wasn't as tough as I'd been led to believe. That may be partly due to the changes Zero Mission implements. Samus can now shoot diagonally and while crouching. Your projectile upgrades also stack, so you don't have to pick and choose between them. The Chozo statues found throughout the game give you a rough idea of where to go next, and areas new to this remake unlock helpful new abilities such as a ledge grab. The margin for error here was much bigger and more forgiving than I had expected. The responsiveness and accuracy of the controls stood out to me. Samus turns on a dime, her running speed is in a nice sweet spot, and while the floaty space jumps of the series took a little adjusting to at first, they soon felt natural. Considering the limited number of buttons on a Game Boy Advance, compared to the breadth of Samus's abilities, I'm impressed at how consolidated and ergonomic the controls felt. The fact I didn't have to keep swapping my abilities and items in a menu a la Zelda speaks to how smartly the few available inputs were designed around. When you do unlock a new ability, the game immediately forces you to use it in a silent tutorial, making sure you know exactly how to use your new toys. New abilities are even teased as you explore routes, hit dead ends, log it in your memory, and are forced to come back later on. When I heard people saying that Metroid is rewarding to play because it doesn't have the hand-holding of modern games, it sounded a little elitist, as if people were gatekeeping in a sense. Now that I've actually played the game, I think I can see what they were trying to say. Metroid is incredible at conveyance. The game's design very clearly states a problem, while trusting you to solve it. It's also fairly apparent when you don't yet have all of the tools you need. At one point, I thought I was soft-locked, having trapped myself. That's when I noticed there were critters moving through a translucent tunnel above me. I fired up, and lo and behold, I could get through to a secret area. Up here, the game taught me that those same parasitic creatures, which I'd been seeing throughout the local areas, could latch onto and destroy the very thing that had been impeding my progress. That honestly felt great to figure out and put into action. The core loop of hitting a roadblock before uncovering a new item or tool that opens up more of the map to explore gave me serious Resident Evil vibes. This is particularly effective when you're searching for optional, hidden upgrades for your health and ammo. Some are out in the open, and you just have to remember to pop back later with the appropriate upgrade. Others ask slightly more of you, and it was these that I really enjoyed going after. The game does just enough to hint that there might be a secret room nearby if you're paying close enough attention, while still allowing it to feel like you've discovered something on your own. One in particular was hidden in the ceiling. I couldn't reach it, but much later when I unlocked the high jump, I came back and still couldn't reach it. Being unwilling to accept defeat, I managed to bomb jump my way up to it. Yeah, I don't have the timing down, I won't be speedrunning the game or sequence breaking anytime soon, but I was able to brute force a few of these upgrades, and it felt oddly satisfying each time. That said, I never figured out how to burst through these single block height supercharge gaps. With the right upgrade, Samus can start a powerful sprint with enough of a run-up, which destroys these blocks, but because these ones are only stacked one high, Samus's forward momentum just stops and she can't get through the rest of them. Here comes the comment section with an obvious solution I should have been able to figure out in 3, 2, 1. Two of the upgrades were a little clumsy or counterintuitive to use. The ledge grab hurt the pacing of some platforming segments, and there are instances where the time it took Samus to pull herself up got me hit again. Some of the platforming challenges seem to have been reworked to require the ledge grab, and it just slowed everything down. Meanwhile, the space jump, which is required in the late game, has a rhythm to it that I just never picked up on. Samus would uncurl seemingly at random, leading to a lot of frustration. I was screaming at my screen when I was trying to escape a self-destruct timer, and this damn space jump just would not cooperate with me. Likewise, some of the stackable upgrades got in each other's way. You unlock the ice beam so that you can freeze these turtles and use them as platforms. Much later, you unlock the screw attack, which turns your regular jump into a lethal sonic spin. When I had to then backtrack through these turtles with the screw attack unlocked, I kept killing the turtles instead of landing on them. Then there's the only part of the game that I would call unfair or deceptive: accessing Kraid's lair. I reached a point where there were seemingly only 2 routes forward. This area, which was quite literally blocked off, and this area where I somehow needed to destroy a block with a missile, but couldn't angle a shot at it. Looking at the map, Kraid seemed to be below me, and this area behind the missile block appeared to be the only way forward. I was here for what felt like an eternity before a friend, who laughed and said they'd done the exact same thing, told me how to progress. This unassuming corridor has a bomb block in the floor which you can drop down. Of course, looking for it, the graphical indication something's different is obvious, but through natural play I had run through the room without a second thought multiple times. Once down there, in a secret green-coded area that doesn't show up even if you visited the map room, you unlock a power-up that lets you destroy exactly the kind of block which was locking me out of a potential route forward. Once you head back up and destroy the offending block, you have to then jump into a waterfall of lava and let yourself sink through acid to a room below. No, I am not joking. Kraid himself was a fairly enjoyable boss fight, if a little easy. A common theme of the bosses was that I could tank them with rapid-fire missiles and win by war of attrition with very little skill involved. Case in point, here's how my fight against Ridley, a big bad with a monstrous reputation, went down. I actually found some of the mini-boss encounters to be more memorable and panic-inducing than Mother Brain's 2 lieutenants. I thought Metroid 1 was kill Kraid, kill Ridley, kill Mother Brain, job done, but that's not the case here, as Zero Mission introduces mini-bosses with very distinct patterns and weaknesses that I found to be more entertaining and challenging than the main events. Well, maybe except this lava boss, it was painfully obvious what to do, and the execution felt slow and tedious. At least it put somewhat of a new spin on an established mechanic, and its second phase a little later on went a ways towards making up for a boring first round. In terms of pacing, I felt the main game came to a close quite suddenly. After killing Ridley, I did a little backtracking to enter the final area, as prompted to by the game itself. There, I had some hectic and scary fights against the Metroids themselves, damn near deadly, before realizing, wait, this is it. This is Mother Brain's chamber. I'm at the final boss already. I could probably count the number of rooms in the finale on one hand, and it's a surprisingly linear section when compared with the rest of the game. It feels like an incomplete, potentially rushed race to the finish line. I would have loved some more build-up and anticipation. As for Mother Brain herself, oh man, that was a rage-inducing difficulty spike. I got bounced around by multiple projectiles coming at me from all directions, constantly dunked in acid, and, thanks to our friend the ledge grab, couldn't recover without getting pelted again. Eventually, I got into a groove and managed to finish off Mother Brain, but damn, that was not a boss battle I was eager to repeat. Then, in my flustered and tired state, I failed to escape the self-destruct sequence which immediately follows the fight, thank you once more ledge grab, this time combined with crumbling blocks, and had to repeat the Mother Brain battle. That's where the original game ends. Zero Mission, however, adds a brand new epilogue chapter that, if I'm completely honest, I wish they hadn't bothered with. I hate when stealth sections are thrown into non-stealth games, and that's exactly what happens here. Samus is shot down by space pirates, and now she has to infiltrate their base and steal one of their ships with no armour and a measly stun gun to defend herself with. I'm reminded of this scene from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off, what are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Only where Marvel used that to empower and embolden Tony Stark, Samus kind of loses her badass card in this section. Throughout the main game, you've been building your arsenal, growing in power. Your pea shooter with terrible range became a freezing wave beam of destruction. Now, you're back to being defenseless. The intent is contrast, to provide a very different, more cautious, intimidating, and high-stakes gameplay experience, and to make the section where you get the power suit back and use it to rip the space pirates a new one feel all the more satisfying. I understand that. The problem is that they didn't pull it off. Detection rules are vague and unclear, likewise the conditions for losing your pursuers seem inconsistent. The alarms seem to be going off for most of my runs and deaths in this epilogue, to the point that I grew increasingly impatient and frustrated. Samus seemed less like a capable fighter who could infiltrate and get one over the space pirates even without her gear, and more like someone whose capabilities were tied solely to her armor. When you do suit back up, the game introduces the space jump I already expressed my distaste for, and power bombs that don't get enough time to shine or be properly utilized in this relatively small and linear level before the game ends for real. I did regain some respect for this area when I found out that you can make your way back to the map the main game takes place in, where it's now raining. And use your new space jump and power bombs to grab some final upgrades you simply couldn't access before. That is, until I realized this was somewhat artificial padding and completionist backtracking. Even the new final boss was... You know what, I'm just gonna roll footage of my fight against it and let that speak for itself. To be fair, most of the bosses can be quickly finished off by spamming missiles, super or otherwise. At least Mecha Ridley requires you to have enough skill to carefully aim and time your shots in order to hit his weak spot. A missed opportunity, and something Metroid could learn from Zelda, would have been to make bosses weak to the mandatory upgrade Samus had found in their lairs. Make the player use their new toy and prove their mastery of it, similar to the poorly paced mini-boss I mentioned earlier. The concept there was good, the implementation not so much, However, if refined, it could create some dynamic encounters in the future. And who knows, maybe they do exactly that. I am on game 1 of 5 here. Thankfully, all of the enemies look distinct and intimidating. Metroid Zero Mission features some absolutely gorgeous pixel art that thoroughly impressed me throughout. We have vibrant, bold, saturated colours with a clear and unapologetic comic book influence. This takes centre stage during short cutscenes that show off certain events and really push the atmosphere up a notch. There's liberal use of blacks to give everything a real weight, density, and dynamism to it. I want a full comic in this style. Animations feature subpixel movement for subtle breathing animations that really bring characters to life. The attention to detail, including making sure Samus's arm cannon is consistently on the same side of her body at all times, is amazing to see considering the additional work required for it. There's also a surprising amount of utility in the art. Every wall, floor, and platform has a red edge. The foreground and background layers are therefore immediately obvious, and you don't have to worry about trying to land on something that's just an artistic flourish. I imagine this is even more effective on a tiny Game Boy Advance screen, where it might be more difficult to discern small details. Somehow, they managed to make red, the colour that's first noticed by the human eye and has the most contrast against any other colour, serve this purpose while also being relatively unintrusive. It should clash with the shading of surrounding objects, but somehow it doesn't. I think that part of this is due to the smartly chosen colour palette. The environments use a lot of oranges, browns, purples, and blues, never moving too far around the colour wheel from that base outline red. It allows the red to look like a natural accent. Yes, I was impressed enough by a red outline to talk about it for 3 paragraphs. No, I will not apologise for it. Yes, it will be the only thing you can see the next time you play this game. You're welcome! I also adore the music. Hot damn, this is some good, crunchy, yet somehow atmospheric stuff. The music always lends itself to what's happening on screen, and the soundtrack has multiple standout tunes. We have sinister body horror moods, twinned with triumphant power ballads, and it all comes together because its placement has just been carefully considered. This might just be the best looking and sounding Game Boy Advance game I've ever played. The presentation, both technically and aesthetically, knocks it out of the park. Absolute 10 out of 10. Even if you're not sure whether the gameplay style will be for you, you should still check this game out for the sheer spectacle alone. Overall, I had a great time with Metroid Zero Mission, and I'm definitely interested in checking the rest of the franchise out. It's just a shame that Nintendo hasn't yet given us a way to play the whole series on one machine. With no Virtual Console on the Switch, and no signs of a Game Boy Advance app anytime soon, the only legal ways to play this game are to pay far too much for an original cartridge on eBay, hoping you don't get a bootleg or repro, or, if you have a Wii U and you're watching this before its eShop inevitably closes, you can buy a digital copy for just £6.29. In fact, pretty much every Metroid game is available on there for very reasonable prices. It also means you get to use the D-pad on the Wii U Pro controller, which actually provides a fairly decent and comfortable way to play these games. It's certainly more practical than my solution, which involved running the Game Boy interface via Swiss, alongside a PlayStation to GameCube controller adapter. Yes, I played Zero Mission on a PS1 pad, using third-party software to access my Game Boy player, and an aftermarket HDMI adapter so my capture card could accept the signal. It's not the kit I would expect most of my viewers to have. However you go about playing Zero Mission, I think you'll really enjoy it. After decades of everyone telling me that Metroid is a must-play series, I can finally see what I've been missing out on, and kind of wish I'd jumped in years ago. That'll about do it for this episode, but once again, thank you so much for joining me, and a special shout out to my patrons, Chocolson and Crow. Seriously, you guys are amazing. I've really enjoyed this. I think I'm probably going to be playing more Metroid in the very near future, and I hope you'll join me as I continue that adventure.